Motorsport TV Live, brought to you by Motorsport Tickets, the dedicated motorsport experiences provider.
Hello and welcome to Motorsport TV Live. I'm Diana Binks with all the latest motorsport news. Bagnaia leads a Ducati 1-2-3 at Valencia as the curtain falls on the career of the legend that is Valentino Rossi. Bottas is on pole for the Brazilian Grand Prix with Verstappen alongside him and Hamilton in 10th. Mazda win at Petit Le Mans while the AXR Cadillac holds on to take the IMSA title. All those stories and more coming up here on Motorsport TV Live. Francesco Bagnaia led a historic first Ducati 1-2-3 and a tense Valencia Grand Prix as Valentino Rossi brought his illustrious MotoGP career to a close with a ride to 10th. After 432 Grand Prix starts spanning 26 seasons, 9-time world champion Rossi has brought the curtain down on his career in an emotional final race. The Petronas SRT rider made up one spot to 9th on the opening lap, though was demoted to 11th when Enea Bastianini blasted past early on in the race in his Aventia Ducati. But a crash for Takaki Nakagami promoted Rossi back into the top 10, with the Italian legend holding off the factory Yamaha of Franco Morbidelli to end his final race with a fourth top 10 of a difficult 2021 season. Honda withdrew Paul Espargaro ahead of Sunday's race following his violent crash in free practice 3 on Saturday, marking the first time since Assen 1992 that no factory team Honda rider started a Premier Class Grand Prix, with Marc Marquez already ruled out with vision problems. In Moto2, Remy Gardner has claimed the 2021 Moto2 Championship after a 10th place finish was more than enough to take the title at the final race of the season. His rival and teammate Joao Fernandez had to win the race, which he did, to have any hope of winning the title, having come into the final round 23 points behind Gardner, who in turn simply needed to finish 13th or higher to seal the deal. Remy, the son of bike champion Wayne Gardner, brought the bike home safely in the red flag shortened race to take the crown. And in Moto3, Xavier Artigas has taken his maiden win in Valencia. In typical Moto3 fashion, the lead changed on numerous occasions and saw champion Pedro Acosta taken out on the last lap. But after all the lead changes, it was Xavier Artigas who came out on top to win the final race of the year. Valtteri Bottas will start the Brazilian Grand Prix from pole position with championship leader Max Verstappen alongside him on the front row. Lewis Hamilton will start from 10th place after taking a penalty for an engine change. The race weekend has been punctuated by a series of decisions from the stewards affecting both championship protagonists and an escalation of tempers between Red Bull Racing and Mercedes, as both team bosses having a say on the stewards' rulings. To discuss all this in more detail, we are joined by Autosport's Formula One reporter, Luke Smith. Luke, thank you so much for joining us. Now, it's turning out to be a very intriguing weekend so far. We've got Max fined for touching Lewis's rear wing. Lewis disqualified from Friday qualifying. Toto and Christian both have a different opinion of everything that's going on at the moment. Could you take us through it and basically clarify what was Max fined for?
Yeah, it's been quite a hectic weekend so far, as you rightly say, and it all did really kick off after qualifying on Friday with the two separate summons for Max and for Lewis. So in Max's case, basically, obviously, we saw the videos of him going over to Lewis's rear wing and touching it and inspecting it. And basically, that is a breach of the FIA's International Sporting Code that says you can't do that in Parc Fermé. And the investigation that followed, they said that they did recognise that drivers were doing that a lot more now, that it was becoming basically a habit for drivers to have a look at other cars, maybe even touch them at points. But they said that it does open the door to potentially cause issues down the line. So that resulted in the €50,000 fine for Max Verstappen. It's meant to be a big deterrent, I think, for drivers doing that in the the future. The FIA did also warn that any future breaches by drivers could be handled more seriously. So, yeah, I think it's a bit of a slap on the wrist for Max. He won't be doing it again. Don't think anyone else will be. And yeah, that's definitely sort of been part of the intrigue that's been going on right the way through this weekend so far.
I mean, the FIA have had to jump on this fairly quickly. I guess we all need clarity as soon as possible, don't we?
Yeah, we do. Yeah. And it's something that the drivers, I mean, they've been doing so often now. I mean, there's even an internet meme about Inspector Seb, which is Vettel, when he goes around to all the other cars after the race and sort of has a little look here and there at them. And it is just something they all do. But I think that this case has really put forward to the FIA that it does open the door to cause some issues. And obviously with the rear wing DRS hearing that was going on for Mercedes alongside the Max case, in that Mercedes did sort of point out that Max did go and touch Lewis's rear wing, and they acknowledged that it probably actually didn't have any impact on the wing at all. It wouldn't have caused the issue that ultimately meant it fell foul of the regulations. The FIA agreed with that fully, but they said it was an open question and that it could open the door for that in the future. So yeah, it's been important for the FIA to jump on it and ensure that there's no issues further down the line.
What did we find that Mercedes fell foul of? Because they're debating what they feel they should have done and could do.
Yes, and that's been, I think, really the big fascinating case here. So Mercedes, their argument was that the part was damaged. That's why Hamilton's DRS failed the test that it goes through after the session. The gap between the two planes of the rear wing has to be 85 millimeters, obviously, and it's an important test that all of the teams will go through. Toto Wolff revealed that the part failed by 0.2 millimeters, so really not a lot in it. But their argument was that because the part was damaged, that they should have had the right to make a fix to it and make a change. And it's something that we saw during qualifying in Mexico last weekend when Red Bull, they had some damage to Sergio Perez's rear wing. But although Parc Fermé regulations were already in force, they were able to talk to the FIA and get that change made. The problem is that because Mercedes didn't notice it themselves, and it was only when the FIA flagged it and deemed it to be in breach of that regulation, that's the first time they found out. So they couldn't actually go to the FIA and ask for permission to fix it. So I think that's Mercedes' sort of point on it, is that had they noticed first, then they would have been allowed to fix it. So yeah, Toto Wolff, he was pretty annoyed about it after the session. He said that he thought the modus operandi and the protocols had changed, and he said that he thinks for the future it's going to be going to set a precedent, and that they'll be watching every other team very, very closely, because if anyone else falls foul of it, they'll want to ensure that they're treated the same way as Mercedes have been this weekend.
So look, it seems like there's some valid questions being asked here.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that it's something that the FIA, they've got to look at and sort of look at their sort of post-sessions checks and the protocols and how everything is done. Because, I mean, the stewards, they're going to argue that basically they followed the rule book to an absolute T. But Toto Wolff, he said there has been a sort of gentleman's agreement in place that when you do have these sort of minor issues here or there like it, it's not a case of that it's black or white by the rule book. It is that if it's such a small margin and if there are extenuating circumstances such as, I mean, damage, which is what Mercedes appear to think it is, but obviously they can't check it still because the wing is still impounded with the FIA, then there is some leeway to make these sort of changes. But obviously Red Bull and Christian Horner, they've got the complete opposite view. They say it's a very binary case. It's either legal or it's not. So to them, it was very clear that Mercedes had to be excluded from the session. I think, yeah, moving forward, the FIA will probably look to, I guess, talk to the teams and ensure that they do have clarity in the future in terms of how they're going to deal with the situation. But I think that for Mercedes, they'll just want to ensure that if they fall foul of this, everyone else who breaches in the future is treated exactly the same way.
And Red Bull have now said that they'll be keeping an eye on the Mercedes wing, and of course their mind-boggling speed. So something's brewing.
Yeah, it does seem like it. We saw, obviously, Lewis Hamilton had that fantastic fight through the field yesterday, going from 20th on the grid to 5th place at the end. We know he's got that new engine in the Mercedes, which obviously does give him a decent straight line speed boost. But Christian Horner, he did note just how quick the Mercedes has been in a straight line recently. He said that in Mexico, they were a long way clear. And yeah, I think he said it was something like a 20k pace difference between Hamilton and Norris when Lewis made that last lap lunge which is fantastic for us all to watch. But it's, again, sort of raised some questions. And it's been a season-long thing, really, about the bendy wings and the flexing wings. And Max Verstappen, he said that when he went and touched Lewis's wing, it was to see how much it was flexing, if it was. So it's clear that there is something brewing. I think Red Bull are going to be keeping a very close eye on it. We've seen this right the way through the season, though. Both teams are pushing each other to the absolute limit. Technically, I think both of them really want to find every last sort of ounce of speed they can. So it's obvious that when you see a rival take a big step forward, you're going to question it and say, well, how have they done that? And is there anything that we're missing here? So, yeah, I think Red Bull, they're going to be keeping a very beady eye on what Mercedes are doing for the closing races now.
Well, we have the race this afternoon. What can we expect, do you think?
I think it's going to be a really good race. I think, again, all eyes will be on Lewis Hamilton. He's going to be starting from 10th place. Obviously, he got back up to 5th yesterday, but does have that 5th-place grid penalty to serve for the engine change. But if yesterday is anything to go by, I think he's really going to be charging through again. And Sergio Perez, he finished 4th in the sprint for Red Bull, and he said he expects Lewis to be right in the mix and back up there again. I think the goal for Max Verstappen will be to try and get the lead off the start from 2nd place, and then basically to get as far ahead as he can to try and ensure he can sew up this race win and, get a decent points gain over Lewis. I think that any hopes that he might have taken maybe another race win ahead of Lewis or anything like that, that looks pretty much gone. I think that the fight back yesterday from Hamilton has sort of reset things a little bit. So, yeah, I think the goal for Max will be just to come away from Interlagos with another sort of step forward taken in the title race. But Lewis has his famous wingman, Valtteri Bottas, who will be starting on pole today after he won the sprint. So, yeah, I think Mercedes will be looking to him to try and maybe fight Verstappen, try and ensure that he can't get too far up the road or even into the lead. And that would certainly pull things, I think, back towards Mercedes' favour. But I think either way, I think it's going to be a really fascinating race.
Look, thank you so much for chatting to us. I agree. I think it's going to be a fascinating race and we can't wait to see the outcome. Many thanks.
Thank you.
Luke Smith, Autosport's Formula One reporter there. Just to remind you that Max Verstappen leads Lewis Hamilton by 21 points ahead of this afternoon's Brazilian Grand Prix. Stay with us. We've lots more news from the world of motorsport coming up here on Motorsport TV Live. Harry Ticknell brought the number 55 Mazda across the line for a win in its last race, together with Jonathan Bomarito and Oliver Jarvis at the 2021 Petit Le Mans at Road Atlanta. Ticknell pulled off an excellent pass up the inside of the leading Valencia Cadillac at turn 8 to take the lead with 22 minutes remaining. In the closing stages of the race, second place Felipe Nasr in the AXR Cadillac had to hold off a rapidly closing Ricky Taylor in the Wayne Taylor Racing Acura for what would be the battle for the overall championship win. Taylor attempted to pass going into turn 10, which resulted in a trip to the gravel, momentarily taking the lead but then having to hand back position. Ticknell eventually brought home the 55 Mazda 3.2 seconds ahead of the AXR Cadillac and 3.7 seconds ahead of the Wayne Taylor Acura. This meant that the Cadillac crew of Nasr and Pippo Derani took the overall IMSA championship, with the number 10 Wayne Taylor Racing crew winning the Michelin Endurance Cup. Will Brown took his debut Supercars win for Erebus at Sydney Motorsport Park as Jamie Whincup and Shane van Gisbergen battled it out for second and third. That should have left him vulnerable to early pace setters Whincup and van Gisbergen later in the race, as they stopped on laps 16 and 19 respectively for 3 new tyres each. That's exactly how it should have played out in the final stint, with the Triple Eight pair showing enough pace to run down Brown's 6-second lead. However, an epic intra-team battle between the 2 Red Bull drivers slowed that progress, Whincup ignoring calls from the pits to let van Gisbergen past, and even running his Kiwi teammate wide several times as they bashed doors. Brown eventually crossed the line only 0.3 of a second ahead of Whincup to take the victory. So that's all for now. I'm Diana Binks. Join us again here on Motorsport TV Live for all the latest news from the world of motorsport. Bye for now.